Appreciate you answering. We appreciate you answering the polls, and also we appreciate when you leave answering the feedback survey. So thank you. It looks like we have quite a diverse group. I'd love to see what your roles are, so please answer in the polls so I can see who's joining us. I recognize some people. I know some people. Good to see you. But there's a lot of names I don't recognize, so I am anxious to see your role and what brings you to this topic. And I'm going to start showing my screen. Hopefully you have received the handouts. And so the topic for today is self-determination and informed decision-making. I want to thank both Tracy Manns and Erica Young, who work for the Family Resource Network of Ohio. You can both wave. I know, Erica, I don't have a slide for you, but soon we will. Erica's new working with us. They're the ones that set up the Zoom, help facilitate the call so that I don't have to worry about everything else, and make sure you get your handouts and everything else. So thank you both very much. A little bit about me, and I want to emphasize a couple of things that I don't typically emphasize a lot when I introduce myself. What I really want to emphasize is for 45 years, I was a licensed speech language pathologist. Obviously, I came to that field because of having a brother, Nick, who everybody told me he couldn't talk, you can't understand him, blah, 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 blah. And I was the big sister, 4 years older than him, I can understand him. I don't have any problem. What's wrong with you? And that became my passion. I wanted people to understand that people communicate, whether they can understand them or not. And a lot of the responsibility was on the listener, us, the communication partners. Also, as a big sister, Jim, Nick, and I grew up in the 70s outside of Cleveland. Some of you I know are from the Cleveland area. A very common topic in the 70s in Cleveland was civil rights. We grew up seeing it every night on TV. We heard about the civil rights demonstrations and, quote, riots in Cleveland. And also as a woman, and as children of a single parent, we realized that women did not have civil rights. I always thought Nick had rights. And so I would say to Nick, when he would come home and say, staff told me I have to, I would say, no, you don't. You have rights. And until the 90s, when I was working with an independent living center in Cleveland, and I was the county board liaison, we were developing a book on choice making and decision making. And I proudly said to the executive director of the IL and a staff member, I've been fighting for my brother's rights. He has rights. I kept telling people, and they said, Barb, your brother did not have civil rights in the 70s. And I said, what? Every time I told him you have rights, and he would say to people, you can't make me do that. I have rights. Nobody pushed back. So I guess everybody was dumber than me about that concept. And they said people with disabilities did not have the civil right of self-determination until 1988. So only, gosh, I have to do math, 35 years, okay? And that's what drives me is I felt Nick had the same rights that I did, even though as a woman, I did not have a lot of civil rights in the 70s, and my mother sure as heck didn't, even though the law said we did. As a speech pathologist, as we entered the 90s, let me do this first, I'm sorry. I want to recognize that all of these opportunities, sessions are provided by the Family Resource Network of Ohio. Please like our website, but please also like our Facebook page. We have lots of stories every week about how different people in Ohio are using Charting the Life course to support and empower people. We are supported by funding from the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities and the Ohio Department of Education. And we are so grateful that we are able to share information with you without cost to you. You have 3 handouts, the PowerPoint, something called Self-Determination Everywhere and All the Time with symbols, and one without symbols. Let me tell you that I developed those resources because I was asked to speak at a national conference of people with lived experience, their families, and some staff that supported them. And the person who asked me was Dr. Tom Fish from the Nisanger Center. And he said, you know, people think self-determination is just speaking up at their meetings. And I want them to know that it happens everywhere, all the time. So I'm going to do a quick overview, self-determination and informed decision-making, what it is, when you use it, why, how to exercise it, and how to support. And just for fun, how many choices and decisions do you think you make every day? Type it in chat. I'm really curious. And I love the diversity of the group. Thank you for typing your role. Lots of different people. Thank you. You know what? If you can keep your camera on, Laura, that's fine. If you can't, yeah. Oh, I see Erica replied. Whatever works for you. Hundreds, more than I care to count. I love it. Over 100, thousands. Okay. I Googled it several times. Over 35,000 a day. 35,000 a day. Think about it. Where are you sitting? What are you drinking? What did you eat? What did you put on? What are you going to do before this call? What are you going to do after the call? When you think about it, we are constantly making decisions in our life. 35,000. Just to remind us all, why is self-determination so important? Well, because in person-centered thinking, the outcome is we want people to have better lives they value, and that they have positive control over their lives. Now, some of you may say, what's positive control? Many of you may work with people who exert negative control over their lives. One of my strengths working as a speech language pathologist was working with people who did not use words to communicate, but they had control and they exerted control over their lives. And because they used other ways, they also had behavior support plans. And it was because we were not recognizing what they were telling us, that they were telling us, we don't like this, we don't want to do this. And as a speech pathologist, teaching them other ways to exert that control. In Charting the Life course, we look at there, the individual has self-determination. That is a civil right. We all have the civil right of self-determination. No one walks around with a checklist or a notebook and says, Barb, let me assess whether you can have this civil right. It is a given. We don't have to prove it. And I'm not going to ask you how many of you have made not so good decisions in your life, okay? We want people to be interdependent. So some of you have heard me, you know, I have a pet peeve with us telling people they need to be independent. I love that Judy Heumann, who was a phenomenal disability rights advocate and passed away earlier this year, defines independent living as not doing things by yourself. It is being in control of how things are done. So we keep hearing this word, control, control, control. We want people to have control. So what are we talking about? I know that there's a lot of confusion about all the topics and the terms that we use. So let me go over how I use the terms, how they are defined in literature, in research. Self-determination is a civil right. Okay, it is a civil right. It is not something you have to earn. It's not something you have to prove. It is a civil right, and it means control over decisions affecting one's life. Self-determination in some literature and some books, some curriculums for students, not just students with disabilities, but students, is that it is a set of skills. And in some states, specifically California that I know about, it may be in other states, it's a waiver service. Okay, so there's many different definitions. Right now, I'm going to really focus on the civil right and some of the skills, and also how we support and empower people. So not self-determination, when I think of self-determination, it's not just what the person does, but what we all do to support them to have that civil right. Informed decision-making is a decision someone makes after they have all the information related to that topic. So informed decision-making is not something that we can say, yes, this person can always give informed decision-making. It is not static. It is specific to a specific decision. The word competence refers to, that's a legal term, and it's related to someone's ability to make legal decisions. That's determined by a judge. So that's, unless someone on the call is a judge, we can't even talk about competence because that is not our scope of practice. And if someone is deemed incompetent, usually the recommendation is it is recommended that they need a guardian. What I really want to focus on is capacity. As a speech language pathologist, what I was asked to do in my professional role, and my professional role as a licensed SLP, was that I could assess someone's understanding of information and their ability to express information. Capacity is the ability to understand information related to a specific decision, and it may be impacted by a variety of factors. So if you're determining if someone has capacity, you're determining it for a specific decision, not, oh, they can always give, they have capacity all the time. So a few weeks ago, some of you know, I had cataract surgery, and the anesthesiologist came into the pre-op room and said, I'm going to give you IV anesthesia, and then when you get in the surgical suite, we're going to give you some more. And I said, please don't, I don't like over medication. Please don't give me a lot. And they said, the one we're going to give you now is like 2 glasses of wine. And then when you get in the surgical suite, we're going to give you a little bit more. I would say that I did not have capacity to make a major decision once they administered anesthesia. And it was not like 2 glasses of wine. I did not enjoy. So I'm just going to tell you that. When I went for the second eye, I was like, and it's not like 2 glasses of wine, okay? If it's like 2 glasses of wine, give me 2 glasses. So, but anyway, my capacity was impacted. Several years ago, I was in a very bad car accident on my way to work. I was in severe pain. I was in shock. I didn't even know what happened. And when my coworkers saw that it was my car that was mangled and in the middle of the road, they stopped, and I couldn't even tell them what happened. I did not have capacity. I was impacted by internal factors, my pain level, and external factors. I had no clue what had just happened to me. So capacity, as an SLP, when I was asked, can you go and ask if someone was making a decision we considered high risk, can you go and assess their capacity? It had to be related to that decision. I did not have a checklist that said, this person can make decisions and this person can help them. It was, can they make this decision at this time? Again, I always like to say that we support people, but we also need to empower them and give them power. Not just support them, but to give them power. For those of you that support families and people, you know that support is defined by the person receiving it, not by the person giving it. As a family member, I can tell you there are times when people were in my home, and especially with my mother, when I was her caregiver, and she would be like, why are they here? She would ask me in Greek, and I would say, Mom, they can only stay for an hour, so just in 37 minutes, they'll be gone. They were not helping us by either one of our perspective. Now, they may have thought they were doing great work, but they were not helping us. So please remember, help is defined by the person receiving it. Some other terms you may hear about decision-making are guardianship, and I'm not going to talk about that. I'm talking about capacity today and self-determination and empowering people to be in control. You all know what guardianship is. It's determined by the court, and the definition I have from Disability Rights Ohio. I don't believe that I need to make a definition up. It's right there. And I'm giving you the definition for supported decision-making. A lot of people confuse the term supported decision-making. It is really a term with capital letters that refers to an alternative to guardianship. However, all of us use help when we have to make a decision. So if you could look at this poll, when you have to make an informed decision, what are some of the things that you might do? And there's some options. 5 plus the 6th one is all of the above. Okay, we have a lot of SSAs. There we go. Thank you. Thank you, Erica. If you could just answer that. I'm sorry. I'm laughing because Tim said, I just made a decision about answering this question. Yes, count that towards your 35,000 for today. I love it. Most of you have said you use all of these processes, right? I will tell you that I don't believe there is a sequence. So let me explain. A few weeks ago, actually a couple months ago, and Tracy was part of this decision. I was asked at the tech summit by a group, will you present to our group, our education service center? And of course, Tracy and I looked at each other and went, yes. And I said, let me look at my calendar. And I looked at my calendar. I said, the day is open. I will hold it. So a week before, I was like, hello. I contacted them and said, what's going on? When do you want me? And they said, we have 2 options. They gave me the options. And I just was like, ugh, okay. I said, Tracy, I'm leaning towards X. I said, but I've also asked them for more information. And Tracy said, I agree with you. I think option A is what we would be more comfortable with. Once we got the information, we both flipped and said option B. So it wasn't a sequential order. And we changed the order. Thank you, Tracy. You know what I mean. And we both were like, whoa, we're changing because we just learned some more. It's not a sequence, okay? If I have made multiple decisions about making a major purchase, then I may talk to nobody. I just had a piece of furniture delivered this week. I did not talk to anybody and say, do you think I should? It's going to cost X. I felt comfortable making that decision. I used none of this. However, with that situation, because it was Family Resource Network of Ohio, I was speaking on behalf of them. I included Tracy when I thought I needed to bounce it off of her. So please, I was asked to make this tool 10 years ago. It's dated on the bottom. I have not seen a need to change the content, and these are not in sequential order. Please know that as a speech pathologist, I worked with adults mostly, and I will tell you that I worked with a lot of people who could not read. And so telling them something was not going to be enough. And often I had to teach people about the decisions. So some of the things that I used when I supported people was, do you have all the information? So the first situation professionally that as a speech language pathologist, my license was on the line, was a referral we got for a 60-some-year-old man who had talked his whole life, was not literate, and had had throat cancer. His larynx had been removed 2 years before. He did not use speech to communicate. He refused to use technology. He had been exposed to technology. He wanted nothing to do with it. His case manager sent a referral. The cancer has come back. Doctor says he has months to live. How do I support him? I have to tell you, at this time, Ohio became very engaged in person-centered approaches. And I had attended many sessions on informed consent and the role of the SLP. So the first thing we had to ask, this gentleman lived in his own apartment. He had supports from a residential provider. What does he know? We don't know. No one's talked to him. Okay. We said, first thing we need to know, we had a nurse worked with me on the team. Our nurse said, did he sign advance directives? At least we would know what kind of medical treatment he wants. Does he want CPR? Does he want IVs? Does he, whatever. And they said, wait a minute. The staff member that went with him for his surgery said, you know what? When they came in the pre-op, they gave him anesthesia, and I was with him all the way until they took him to the surgical doors. And somebody came up to him and handed him a clipboard and said, here, sign this. And it was advance directives. And the nurse, the psychologist, and I literally jumped back from the table and said, oh my God, we cannot accept that. Why? Because he was under the influence of anesthesia. No one explained it to him. So we were like, that's our starting point. We've got to tell him. Let me tell you something else. As I was working with people who were at the end of their life and would ask staff, what do they know? I cannot tell you how many times people said, we didn't tell them, we don't want them to get anxious. We don't want to upset them. And my response was, this is their life. They need to know. You may think, oh my gosh, how could you do that? Please also know, if you watch any old TV shows or movies from the 60s and the 70s, if a woman is in the hospital, the doctor will typically say to the husband, let's step out in the hall and tell the husband, your wife has cancer, she has a few months to live. And the husband will say, let's not tell her, I want her to be happy and not worry. So we as women were often not given all the information or allowed to have control over decisions affecting our life. And some of us are still experiencing that, the removal of power over choices. Do you have and so what I did was, do you have all the information? If you don't, this is what you can say. Please tell me all my options. Is there more information I need to know? Which is what I did with the agency who asked me to present. You know, I need a little bit more information. What do you think? Is there more information I need to know? Do you have the information in a way that you understand it? Whatever that is. And what can people say? Can you give me that information in a way I understand? In written form, symbols, large print, a video, a website. When you go to the doctor and they tell you you're going to have cataract surgery, they handed me a booklet, what you need to know about cataract surgery. When I left the appointment, the doctor said, let me print out the after visit summary for you. We get information to take with us and remember and reflect on. Yes, it could be plain language. Exactly. So what a person can say is, can you give me that information in a way I can understand? For the gentleman who was at the end of his life, he did not read. He did not, he understood speech, but I needed to make sure that he could express to me that he understood the language, the options, excuse me. And so I did give him information using photos, using symbols, using drawings. We actually pulled medical books to get pictures of what the advance directives truly were. We asked him if he watched medical TV shows. He didn't, you know, like the doctor TV shows. We're like, oh, great. Never dismiss the power of YouTube. The issue with YouTube is good to inform people, but when I had to ask them questions and say, show me what you want, show me what you don't want, a YouTube video is hard to get that comprehension and expression. So it's good to give them the information, but when I had to ask him, what do you want? Do you want someone to do CPR or do you not want them to do CPR? I used symbols. Do you understand all the information? And if you don't, I don't understand, please explain. So as a sibling, I went to every medical appointment that Nick had. And at the end of his life, he had COPD. And we saw a pulmonary specialist. And the one appointment, the doctor was talking to Nick, and I could tell Nick it was just going over his head. Nick was stressed. And I said, Nick, do you understand all this? And he shook his head, no. I said, doctor, can you explain it again? Doctor sat down, my brother Nick used a power chair. So the doctor who had been standing sat down. So he was at eye level with Nick, pulled a notebook out of his pocket, a pen, and drew and said, this is what a lung should look like. This is what your lung looks like. He goes, Nick, I don't know if this is normal for you because of your cerebral palsy, because I haven't known you your whole life. So this is what it should look like. This is what it looks like. And Nick was like, whoa, okay, and nodded his head. And I said, and he said, so because of this, this is how I'm going to treat you. Last November, I have a relative, my godson, who is an adult. I have never had a paid relationship with him. He has DD. And but I have supported him to make decisions for about 30 years. And in November last year, I got a call one evening, pretty late in the evening, from his sister who lives out of state. And she said, Barb, his staff is there to help him go to bed. He lives in his own apartment. She said he's not right. Something's not right. And she said his staff can't FaceTime. I tried talking to him. I don't know if something is not right because he also doesn't talk a lot. He's like one of those people that gives you one word answers, maybe. And she said, I hate to ask, are you home? I said, yes. She said, do you think you could go to the apartment? I said, I'll tell them I'll be there in half an hour. I went to the apartment. He couldn't let me in. That was the first clue. He couldn't buzz me in. His staff had to run down and let me in the apartment building. I said, why are you coming down? She goes, he couldn't remember how to let you in. I was like, oh my God. Went up to his apartment. I said, what's going on? Nothing. How do you feel? Fine. His staff was Barb. I said, Barb says something's not right. Barb says to me, hand him his water bottle. He always had a water bottle. He could not take the water bottle. I said, okay, that's a concern. And all of a sudden, Barb goes, look at his hand. He was shaking. I said, Barb, call 911. I had his sister on the phone. And I said, can you call 911? She goes, he has an emergency button. So she pressed the button. Within minutes, EMTs were there. They walked in the door. Hello, sir. How are you? Fine. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm like, oh my God. So his sister and I are both saying he needs to be transported. We both are power of attorneys for healthcare. I have the POA on my phone. And they said, he has a right to not go. We go, he is not himself. We said, he is not himself. And so we are saying he needs to be transported. Well, he has rights. No, we want him transported. He's checking his vitals. His vitals are fine. There's nothing. I said, no, he cannot hold anything. His arm is shaking. No, he's not fine. He's not responding the way he typically does. A second squad comes. Lieutenant walks in. He goes, hello, I'm Lieutenant so-and-so. I'm like, 2 squads? And he says, what's going on? First squad starts reporting. What are the vitals? First squad says the vitals have been all normal, and then says, this last one is not right. Something's wrong. The lieutenant says, is your equipment calibrated? Of course it is. Now his sister and I are like, transport. And the lieutenant took vitals and said, we're transporting. I said, thank you. Thank God my godson lives like a mile from both the main campus of Cleveland Clinic and University Hospital. When we got there, they let me immediately into the exam room. And I said, have you seen the doctor yet? No. I said, okay, I've got his sister on the phone. Doctor comes in and says, you have XYZ. I need to treat you. This is what I need to do. And if I don't, you will not survive the night. And he starts shaking his head, no. We both said, we're the power of attorney. And he said, you need to talk it over as a family. I'm going to leave you. I'll come back in a few minutes. So now my thought is, can he make the decision? Does he have the capacity right now? I said, what did the doctor tell you? He said, I'm sick. I said, what else did he tell you? I'm very sick. What else did he tell you? He needs to treat me. What is the treatment? He told me the treatment. I said, what else? He goes, I'm very sick. I said, what else? He said, if he doesn't do it, I'm going to die. He said, I don't want to die. That told me he had capacity. I said, you need to tell the doctor that. And your sister and I will be right here. We won't speak until you tell the doctor. And if he has questions, the doctor then said, can I at least see your POAs? Yes, I have them on my phone. So again, I would have told you that he could make any decision. He made his financial decisions. There were a couple times he messed up on some decisions and I had to support him in those 30 years, but he was pretty good about managing his life. But I had to check. And what struck me is his sister said, his sister was like, my husband is checking flights. I'll be there tomorrow. And she goes, Barb, can you go off speaker? And I said, the doctor's going to come in. I have to leave the room. She said, okay. And she goes, I can't believe you talked to him that way. I could never have pushed him that much. And I said, I had to make sure that he was part of this decision if he could make it. And if not, you and I had POAs and we had the paper. So we were going to push that. Do you have information in a way that you can review it? So with the gentleman who had cancer. Oh, I also supported someone who had to plea in court. And he also did not read and knew sign language, but did not understand the concept of guilty, not guilty, or no contest. And so I had to put it in symbols. I had to teach him not guilty means I didn't do this. And I had to put pictures of what he was being charged with. I had to make sure he knew what he was being charged with. And I also had to give it to him in a way so he could study it. And also so I could pull it out and say, which one means that you're saying you did it? You know, which one says I didn't do it? Which one says I'm not going to say either way?
Is that on that paper?
So I could check his comprehension. Do you have time to make your decision without being rushed?
Barb,
Yes.
There's a question that you might want to address real quick.
Oh, okay.
It's Tina, and she says, was that a power of attorney, of medicine, or everything?
Actually, we had both. We were POAs for healthcare and POA for general. And I had them both on my phone, thank God, because I cannot tell you how many times I had to show it and then the next day give people hard copies. So it was both. Thank you for asking. So do you have time to make a decision without being rushed? I can't tell you how many times people would say to Nick, here, sign this, or what do you want to do? And I would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't have to answer that now. There's no decision that has to be made immediately other than calling 911. And in the service system, I will tell you, in the 90s, in the O's, we were asking people to give informed consent, and we sure as heck weren't getting informed consent. That's a legal term. We were not asking people to demonstrate comprehension. So I would always tell Nick, you have time. This came about once because I always went to Nick's planning meetings. And one day I got a call from the provider like late at night and said, are you coming tomorrow? And I said, what? And they said, didn't you get the letter and the notification? I said, no. And they said, oh my God, we goofed. Can you come tomorrow? I said, no, because I was actually supporting someone who was dying. And I was like, oh my gosh, my brother, someone who's dying that I'm paid to support. I said, I can't come to the meeting. I just can't. I talked to my brother and he was freaked out. You're not going to be there. I said, Nick, did they say anything that you don't like? Are they, you know, I know your coordinator talked to you because that's the type of person she was. I wasn't fearful. And he said, yeah. And I said, are you afraid they're going to say something that you don't like? Yes. And she said, oh, yeah, I didn't have guardianship and I still don't have guardianship over him. And I won't unless I won't. Anyway, and I said, Nick, if you don't like the plan, don't sign it and tell them I want my sister to read it. So he had his meeting. Nick used a laptop, so he typed and it had voice output. And he said, I don't want to sign until my sister reads it. And boy, did I get a call quick. But empowering him to say, I don't want to do this yet. I want to think about it. I have to tell you about my godson, who I explained the story. His life significantly changed after that hospitalization. Significantly. Very significantly. And so I always thank that provider for making that call to his sister and alerting us that something was not right. Another thing to consider, does your decision hold over time? So when I was supporting the gentleman at the end of his life, and I supported many, but the one story is probably the most powerful. I gave him the information. I double-checked, triple-checked his understanding and decisions related to advanced directives over multiple sessions, over multiple days, because I wanted to see, was it consistent? Same with the gentleman who was going to court. Did his decision hold over time? Are you able to make the decision without being influenced or coerced? So people should not be saying to you, you need to, you should, why don't you? It would be best if, and other things to direct you. So I remember once when, for Nick, the provider called me and said, you need to tell your brother he needs to. And I said, no, I don't. And I said, have you talked to him? And they said, I said, have you told him you called me? I said, we need to have a conversation with Nick about this. And I'm not going to tell him he needs to. This is not a life and death decision. I don't have to tell him that. And I think one of the things, if professionals, you know that we typically ask questions so that the answer we want from people is yes, and they will more than likely tell us yes, because they see us in positions of authority. And we need to tell people they can say no. And I always tell people there are at least two choices, yes and no. So I can't tell you how many times when I was supporting people who were at the end of their life, staff or family would say, well, I can make them change their mind. And the first time a staff member said that to me, I was mortified. I had no clue what to do. I talked to my supervisor and she said, who was in the room when she said that? And I said, her supervisor, his supervisor, and his supervisor. And she goes, go to the top two and tell them that if you learn that that staff member has tried to change his mind after you have assessed his comprehension and his ability to express his choices over time, that you will be filing a rights violation. And I said, okay, and that's what I did. This one really struck me. When I worked with the gentleman and went through the advanced directives, explained to him, and I have to tell you, he only would talk to me and the nurse from the county board. When we went to his apartment, he didn't want anyone else to talk to. And when we gave him papers that explained and had pictures and symbols, he would take those papers when we left and he would lock them in a lockbox. And when we came to visit him again, he would have taken those papers out and had them in front of him when we sat and met with him. So after about the third or fourth time, the nurse and I went through the advanced directives with him. We're at his apartment. We left at like 7 o'clock at night. We were both exhausted, but we both were like, oh my God, he understands. He's given us the same answers. We feel we can now move forward to honor his wishes for treatment or no treatment. And I called my supervisor from my car, left her a voicemail because it was 7 o'clock at night, and just said, oh my gosh, Karen, I'm so excited. This is the fourth time. He understands. We both feel confident. And my measure was always, I am comfortable attesting this on my license. And I said, both of us are comfortable attesting this on our license. We know our licenses are at risk. We cannot, we cannot coerce or anything like that. We have to be ethical. And I was just so relieved. The next day I went into the office, I listened to my voicemail. My supervisor said, I'm so glad you feel good about this. You guys did a lot of work, blah, 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 blah. And then she said, and does he know he can change his mind? And I was on the phone with the voicemail and went, he'll know today. And I hung up and thought, how the heck am I going to tell him he can change his mind? And I thought about it. I thought about how can I let him know he can change his mind? How can he, what is he supposed to do if he wants to change his mind? So the only thing I could think of, I took a photo of myself. I put it on a card, on cardboard, poster board. On the back, I wrote, if he gives you this card, call me immediately. And I put my personal cell phone and I put my name. I told the staff he trusted the most. I told the supervisor staff, and I went and met with them. And I said, if you ever want to talk, if you say, I don't want to do this now, or I want to change my mind, you give this to, and I gave him the 2 names of the people that he said he would talk to. I never had thought about, I've got to make sure he knows he can change his mind. Now, Nick, I would always tell him that, you know, you can always change your mind. You can always call me, blah, 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 blah. But that was a different relationship. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to remember this when I support people. They can always change their mind. As we all can, right? How many times have we made a decision and gone, yeah, I don't think so. That's not working. So also reminding people that just because you make a decision, you don't have to hold with it forever. And, you know, that you can change your mind. You can decide to do something different. And then what do you need to say? You know, I tried things, I don't like it. I want to try something else. And then telling people who they need to let know, who they need to talk to. I was just checking to see if there were any other questions. So some other things we need to remember and tell people is we make decisions every day, 35,000 in many places about many things. Some of them are very low risk. You know, when I open my refrigerator, am I going to use my pink water bottle or my blue water bottle? Low risk. What am I going to wear today? Where am I going to sit to record this? What did I have for breakfast? How many cups of coffee did I drink? All sorts of decisions and choices. We don't just start making decisions and choices when we're 18 and reach the age of majority. Our role to support and empower is how are we giving people options throughout their life to make decisions and choices? So as a speech pathologist, whenever we were introducing a different mode of communication, a device, pictures, symbols, signs, the first thing that we would introduce people to is how to say no. We wanted to make sure that people had a way to say no. And then we had to teach their partners. They said no, you need to honor that. You may not like that they said no. I don't want to work. Okay, I will give you a break for 5 minutes and then I'll come back and check. And for little kids, we would say, you know, we want to teach kids that any kind of an expression, whether it's a reach, a word, pushing a device, handing a picture or a symbol or a photo, that they had power, that communication gave them power. And so what did we tell, you know, early intervention? Give the kids choices. What shirt do you want to wear? This one or this one? And show them that you reach for this one, that's the shirt you wear. Or you want the orange pop versus, or the orange Kool-Aid versus the red Kool-Aid, that's what you get for snack time. And build choices throughout the day so that little kids learn that by making a choice, I have some control over my life and my environment. This is not something we do at 18 or 14. It's something we do all along. Please let me also clarify, when I'm talking about having control, I am specifically saying that people have control over decisions, not that they direct their meetings. The ability to direct an IEP meeting or an ISP meeting is a whole different set of skills than directing the content of that meeting and sharing what kind of life you want. Please remember, those of you that write IEPs, ISPs, those meetings are to meet compliance regulations, okay? You have to get so many things done. You've got to get signatures. You've got to cover so many points. You've got to explain certain things. Those are compliance-driven meetings. It is your job to run the meeting. It is the person and the family's job to direct the content. And we need to empower people to know they can share that information and it will be respected and honored. So sometimes we make a choice and we don't like it, so we change our minds. And also we learn by trying. How many of, I had a niece without any kind of labels that hated trying different foods. And her whole life, because her dad lived with me for 11 years, she was in my house a lot. I would tell her, you have to try the food. And I would put a napkin or a paper towel under her mouth and say, try one bite. If you don't like it, spit it out. Because I wasn't going to have her stuck on Kraft mac and cheese when there were so many other better quality foods available to her. Better way to say it. Go ahead, Tracy.
I was going to say, we have a question in the in the chat about sharing your slides. Do we have permission to share them if we give credit? Would you like to speak on that real quick?
To use my slides? You mean the un-PDF form?
I believe so. It's in the chat there if you want to take a look.
Amy, is that what you mean? The un-PDF?
Yes.
Have a conversation with me. You know me, and we'll talk about it. I appreciate that you asked that you give me credit because I appreciate that. Yes, yes. Contact me, Amy, okay?
I'm doing a training on supported decision-making next week. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
We'll talk.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks, Amy, for asking. Thank you, Tracy. So, and these symbols, just FYI, they are from Boardmaker, which was a communication program software that used symbols. So these are symbols people would have seen on their communication devices. Of course, now that the internet is so open and we can pull things off the internet, there's other ways to get symbols, but I did this 10, 20 years ago, okay, when I was working as a speech pathologist. So I see there's another comment. The retro symbols, yeah. But you know what? People understand them. And please let me also say to people, I did not just walk in the door and say, do you want to plead guilty or not guilty? I had to teach people what that meant. And that's why I use the symbols, because then I had to say to them, which one do you want to say to the judge? I had to teach people the information. I did, just like you have to be taught some of the information when you take a loan, when you agree to a medical treatment, when we don't walk in the door knowing it. We have to be taught. So, and I had to teach people the options. Again, the slides I showed you, that is not a process that's in order. You can start anywhere. You could start with, I want time to think about this and stop the rush. I encourage you to look at this booklet. It's located on lifecoursetools.com under library and then life stages. And what I love about it is it gives you things to consider when you're talking about advocacy and engagement. A lot of people in early intervention have said to me, Barb, why are you talking about daily life and employment with little kids? Okay. And I say, look at what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to set up routines for children. You're supposed to teach them responsibility, give them chores around the house. Why? Because we're teaching kids predictability and control. We all have control in our lives because we have control over our schedule. And so think about, how are we empowering people throughout their lifespan to learn how to exert and have positive control? I have a reminder from Deb Peterman that I will be doing this presentation also on October 24th at 6:30 to 7:30 for the Center for Disability Empowerment. And she's got she posted the Zoom. Thank you, Deborah. I thought you just sent it to me. The 24th of October. If you look at this experiences and questions booklet, you can start looking at the domain of advocacy and engagement. So how are we teaching people to speak up? And even more important, are we listening to them? And that was one of the things I had to really emphasize with staff. I'm sorry, they told you no. That means no. No means no. So it's not power over, it's power with. You also might want to look at the integrated support stars. There's one for each of the 6 life domains in the OISP, plus respite and supported decision-making. And the 2 that I have on the screen are the ones for advocacy and engagement, and also supported decision-making options. It might help you think of possibilities, but please, 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 remember that I'm talking about capacity, and capacity is not static. Capacity is related to, can this person make this decision at this time? I was the full-time care partner and also caregiver for my mother. As her dementia increased, she did not have capacity. I did have power of attorney over healthcare and actually all the general power of attorney. But when she could make the decisions, I made sure that she did make those decisions. When she could no longer make the decisions, then I had to step in and make those decisions on her behalf, which if you want to know what a difficult decision is when you're making them on behalf of your parents. And what would she want? What did she, that's very difficult. Also for your siblings. I can't speak to being a parent, but I can tell you I supported both of my brothers through major decisions, and they are the hardest ones. The professional ones were easy. I knew what I had to do. Go in, make sure you explain, check their comprehension. Can they express their choice? Does it hold over time? Life is good. When it was a family member, it becomes much more difficult. Some upcoming events, if any of you haven't had an overview, we're having one on October 12th with CEUs. I'm doing a series for families to help them start using the tools. And next March, just hold the dates. We have an Ohio Showcase coming up that will be in Columbus. Also, I'm working with several groups right now doing guided implementation, helping people move from this is a great idea to how do we actually use it, and getting people to actually integrate Charting the Life course in their work. And so we also provide that. I thank you for your attention. I love your comments. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Tracy to send me the chat because I haven't been able to read everything. And as you leave, a survey will pop up. So when you click on leave, the survey will pop up. Erica, Tracy, give me a head nod. Yes? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your attention and appreciate your what do you call it? I appreciate your participation too. So hope to see you in the future. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Oh, thank you, Kelly. I got lots of stories.
Dr. Neckles, if you want to stay on the call for just a moment, I'll introduce you to Barb. If you don't have time, I understand.
Who is it, Tracy?
Dr. Neckles, Dr. Kristen Neckles.
Oh, okay.
Recently taken an interest in Charting the Life course. I met her in my Tuesday night group.
Oh, okay, great.
You may be working with her a little bit. So I just thought I'd introduce you if she has a moment. She might already be gone, I can't tell.
Awesome.
Yeah, she looks like she's already gone.
Oh, okay.